Shalom. So today we're going to look at Ecclesiasticus 29 verses 21 to 24. It says, "The chief thing for life is water and bread and clothing and a house to cover shame." All right? So what we have to see is that these chief things for life, they're weaponized and used against us, right? So water is one of the main things we need. What do they do? Monopolize the system and now have the water running through a line that they can control, right? So if you want to quench your thirst, if you want to cook for your family, that is now a weapon. So each time you turn on your pipe, you're gonna have to pay your enemy, right? So water is now become wicked, right? Because that's what happened when things fall in the hands of the wicked. Everything becomes wicked. Um, bread. Well, we live in a time period now where the money is the bread. So when people are going to work, they say they're going to hunt what? They don't say they're going to hunt the money. They say they're going to hunt the bread. No, bread is their food, right? So there's a difference between your primary and your secondary. So money is not your primary. It is a secondary that brings forth your primary. So the money can be used to buy the food. The money is a secondary. That's why you give it away to get your primary, which is the food. But like I said, we live in a system where the the money has now become the primary. Primary. All right. It says and clothing. Now a lot of the defenders of this system will say, "Oh, we speak against the system, but yet we wear their clothing." Like, weren't we wearing clothes before Babylon? What were we just naked people running around? No, we have been wearing clothes a long time before that. So that is pointless. You're just defending the very system that is set against you, right? So yes, we used to have our sheep, we used to have our all those animals that we would use as covering, right? Now it says, and a house to cover shame, right? And a house to cover shame. You see, you can live in the most expensive apartment that you're paying your monthly rent, but that's not enough because guess what? You can be evicted, right? So having your own place is very different, no matter how small it is. Matches box, right? It says, "Better is the life of a poor man in a mean cottage," right? So it's better for a man that lives in the hills, has his own cabin, cottage, camp. We say hochi, right? Than delicate fare in another man's house. So, can you give an example of this? Yes, Moses. The delicate fare in another man's house when he was in Pharaoh's house. He was enjoying all the pleasures of whatever was provided for him, sitting at the king's table, right? That's delicate fare in another man's house. But it says, "Better is the life of a poor man in a mean cottage." The same Moses, for example, when he was taking care of the flock for Jethro, his father-in-law. So you see, that life was better than when he was in Pharaoh's house, right? He says, "Be it little or much, hold thee contented." So be happy with what you have, right? "That thou hear not the reproach of thy house. For it is a miserable life to go from house to house." Now let me put that different. It is a miserable life to go from job to job, right? "For where thou art a stranger, thou darest not open thy mouth." So you see, just like in your rent apartments, you cannot open your mouth, you cannot change anything. If the landlord says, "Do not put a nail there," you cannot put a nail there. "Do not do this," you cannot do that. You're a stranger in another man's house, just like we were strangers in Egypt, strangers all over in captivity. The very house that you're in, you're also a stranger there. You don't have the authority. to open your mouth and change anything. You cannot live your own laws, right? As it says, it's a miserable thing to go from house to house. So it's the same, you go from job to job, you see the same wickedness. You cannot keep the laws of the Most High there. You cannot speak against the wickedness there, right? And this is where it says in the beginning that and they were not ashamed. Not ashamed to do what? They're not ashamed to keep the laws of the Most High. That's what happens when you are set in your own place. You can keep your own laws, but you cannot go to another man's house and try to bring your laws there. Don't you dare open your mouth. You cannot go to their religious institutions and tell them, no, the law is not done away with. You should not do this. You should not. You cannot do that. You cannot go to your job and say, you cannot go to your job and tell them, oh, you should not do this or you should not do that. Don't you dare speak against the Romans. Who do you think you are? Right? So, not until you have your own space where you can keep your own laws, the laws of the Most High, then you can actually speak, then you can open your mouth. All right? So, this is just showing how they weaponize the very things that we use, and because of that, we become slave to everything that they have to offer, right? Because you're gonna want to keep your lights on, you're gonna want the roof over your head, you're gonna want your job. So it's 10 times harder to even serve the Most High because you're battling with this wickedness every day, and this is the very same wickedness that gives you water, bread, clothing, and a house to cover your shame. So are you gonna give all of that up to go and serve your God in the wilderness? Are you the next Moses? These are things that we need to be aware of to understand what are the primary things that are hindering us from sacrificing to our God. These the very things that we use every day. So if we're doing this every day, at what point do we stop? Where is the threshold to say, okay, now it's time for us to go and sacrifice to our God? This is how wicked they are. When it says bread, and in today's society, it's referred to as the money, the job, or whatever, right? Think about this. Let's think about this for a moment. When you work for, because these people, they know exactly what they're doing. When you work for a person, they can pay you enough where you don't need to go back. But that's not how they want it. They want to keep you doing the same thing for 40, 50 years, and when you're done, when you have no more energy to give your service unto them, you should have no energy to do anything for yourself. So you believe in this concept that, oh, you work all your life, then you retire with all that money, but you have not the energy to do anything without that money, right? What can you start? What can you do at that point? Nothing. That's how they wear us out, right? So you save all your money for a doctor bill for when you get old, rather than eating healthy, live a balanced life to stay healthy, so you don't have to worry about sickness, right? So they have you saving for sickness rather than um, treating your body to fight against whatever sickness. You eat the same foods that they put on the market, the same ones that are engineered. You don't go to the farmer's market to at least buy a better quality food. You're in the city, boom, Burger King, fast food restaurants, because you're jumping from this job at 2:30 and you need to get to the next job by 3:15, so you only have time to just take the drive through, pick up something quick to eat and move. Everything has been weaponized against us. But when do we actually realize these things, right? So as I was saying about the jobs, that's the cycle that they keep us in. If you want to feed your family for this week, you go and work for them, right? If you want to feed your family next week again, you have to go and work for them. And that's where we are stuck. So every week we're repeating the same cycle of doing the same things just to feed our family. There's no ending to that cycle, because you're always going to want to feed your family. You're always going to want to a roof over your head, right? So what can you do in this case? Think about what's happening in Sri Lanka, right? I think it's Sri Lanka. The crisis, everything is falling apart. how would you balance yourself? That's it. You have to start by having resources. Resource meaning you eat eggs, right? Yes. So you make a small coop. You get chickens. You get like a rooster, a few hens, right? You have eggs. In time to come, you can even eat the roosters, right? You have the hens to produce eggs, so you get rid of your egg bill when you go shopping, right? You drink milk. You can come together with your family. You buy a dairy cow, right? And you have milk. You get rid of your milk bill when you go shopping, right? You might eat goat meat, right? Or sheep. You buy a pair of it. You and your family come together, you put money, and each time they reproduce, then you can spread out. So no, this kid that is born today is for this. You call this person's name on it, and that's how you extend. You start from there. You start as a family structure. It can be a group of friends, whatever it is, your circle, your structure of people, and that's how you kind of like you get a freedom here internally to know that what, if I lose my job, at least I won't be you know dying of hunger, starvation, or anything like that. You have resource. So recognize the things that they weaponize against us and find a way to break it, right? Jumping from job to job, moving from apartment to apartment, that is not going to change much. You're stuck in a cycle, right? You can't even, your spirit is not free, it's still in bondage because you can't do the things that your spirit want to do. And the things that you don't want to do, that is what you have to do because you're not designing a life to change what you're not comfortable with. You have to think resource, think about owning resource, right? So when they weaponize all of these things, you don't get taken away with stress, high blood pressure, because you're worried every day. What if I lose my job? What if my job don't call me back? What if I can't afford this rent this month? Oh, winter is coming up. What if I can't do all of these things? Right? So we have to counteract these things and understand also, don't get too comfortable in this life just because you can afford you can financially afford things, you can pay for what you want. There will come a time where you can't, and the money will not be able to help you. But have something secure, right? That's what you can do for yourself and for your family. We need to break this. Shalom.